Zvinodaiwa kwazvo yerudo rwako kudzidzisa rudo rwako. So I just came across the word hope when I was looking at my notes. Then defined hope as the confident expectation of what God has promised, and its strength is in the faithfulness. It's an optimistic state of mind that is based on an expectation of positive outcomes, which respect the words and circumstances in one's life or in the world at large. Pandaiverenga, then I thought, yes, this has got something to do with what we are here about. Tauya pano, VanaBaba, who have been striving to work together, kuzvisimudzira maybe on the first hand, if you like, but mostly kuti tive vanhu vanotendeseka mu mission yedu yekuzadzikisa zvido zvaMwari. Because I believe kuti we are here on earth to serve God. That's what we are here to do. And how do we serve God? We serve God through what? Through loving Him and doing and following His commands. His commands are that we love Him and love one another. So how do we love one another? We love one another through, I suppose the best example yandaona so far about loving one another is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Saka kuda kwaunozviita iwewe is the primary example of how you should love everybody else. So maybe one can always assume kuti pane vamwe vanhu vasingazvide. There are people who don't love it themselves, in which case they cannot also love other people because they don't love themselves. So the love actually comes from within. It starts from within and then pans out. Starts from within to love God. You start from within and to love your neighbor. So without that love inside you, it's not easy for it to pan out and also to be shared with anybody else. So because I suppose it's like the seed that is planted in you. If you are given a seed, yerudo, then that's what you should be growing all the time. Kuti ikure in you and then also spread out to other people. Because that love is what we should be sharing. Now, in the process of our growing the love, sharing the love, demonstrating the love, this is where we meet all these adversaries, all these pleasures that Baba Joe was talking about. Kuti tinorunzirwa mune zvakawanda-wanda. Tokangana kuti the love that we have in the first place also came from God. He is the one who planted that seed in us. Kuti ite thrive in us, that love. And when He planted it in us, we are supposed to use it, that love, to love one another. But my adversities anotikanganisa kuti tive tinodanana ndo maforces anobva kuna Satan manje achitirunzira, achitita divert, achitiratidza zvimwe zvinhu zvinotifungisa kuti tayaruka, takurira zvinhu zvepasi pano, tiri kugona kuita zvinhu zvakanaka. In many ways dzimwe nguva zvinenge zvisina kutombonaka. Asi tinozvitaura in our minds kuti zvakanaka izvo. Particularly kana zviri kubva tabvuma kuitwa diverted. Because I think it's through that diversion that leads us astray. Because kana tiri kuteedza guidance yaMwari, we should always be straight. We should be pure in our hearts. We should be thinking zvinhu zviri positive. We should be thinking zvinhu zvinokudza, zvinobatsira hama yako, zvinobatsira your neighbor. But we are always, like we've identified, kuti there's always the forces dzinogara dzakativhisa mudirection yekuenda kuna Mwari, mudirection yekudayira, yekubelieve what God is saying. Our hope then, in this respect, is that tinoda kuti tisvike panzvimbo, position where God wants us to be. That should be our hope. Kuti kana chinge takwanisa kuti tive tinorarama sevanhu vanoteera chidzidzo chaMwari, vanoteera zvatakasikirwa naMwari, we should be hoping kuti ndo zvatinoramba tichita achieve, kuti tive vana vaMwari vakakwana. But our hopes, like I've said, are always distracted. Ndo zvinozotivhisa pamwe kuti toshaya hope yedu, zvatinenge tiri kutarisira hazvichaitika, because takwanisa kuti tirunzirike and lose direction. Isusu zvino now sanababa sevanhu vari pano panyika, we know kuti our war is always against the works of the devil. That's what we're always fighting against. Saka, for us to be able to continue hoping to achieve what God wants us to achieve, we must now build strategies and ways in which we can keep the devil away. One of them is usually to keep together as men of faith. Because takaungana tiri vanhu vane chinangwa chimwe chetecho, we'll have enough power to actually overcome the devil. Because uri one, he can come up with all sorts of funny things. Hapana munhu anosara kukudzora kuti iwe kwawakuenda uko handikuba. Shoko rinoti zvakati zvakati. Ndo zvinofanira kunge zviri kukudzora izvozvo. But through our union, sanababa, say church, say believers, we need to read and understand the word, because the word is our manual. That's the one that gives us the guidance as to how we should be operating. The hope is what we are always striving to achieve, if you like. Though the light at the end of the green, let's go at the end of the tunnel, if you like. Yatinongoramba tichitarisira kuti ukoko ndo kwatinoda kusvika uko kuna Mwari. Saka kuti tisvike ikoko, we have already been told kuti there are a lot of things zvinongotikanganisa kuti tisvike ikoko. But kuti tikwanise kusvika, we must overcome obstacles acho. I think in the theme as well, we are told we must be joyful, even against our adversities, which means we must always continue to strive to be hopeful, if you like, to be always mindful yekuti uko kune light ndo kwanofanira kunge tichitosvika. Saka whatever is in my way, I must overcome. I must defeat it. And Saka kana ndachidefeata, then I'll know that I'll get to my light. Saka while I'm in the process, if I'm working with God, God will always be on my side. I will always be able to defeat zvinhu zvandinosangana nazvo on my way. Because God is all powerful and he can make things happen that we don't even expect. Example yataurwa yemajazi yekuti mai vakanga vakutofunga kuti she's now losing her family, but the simple thing chakangonzi collect my empty jars. Ukanzi iwe uri kuchema imwe nhamo wonzi go and collect empty jars. How crazy that sounds. Because we also talk in one situation where we talk about something else, chekuti uite, which sounds very meaningless. and useless at the end of the day. But what God now does, and mai vakateerera kuti yes, those are ones rikatingoita, then vachizoona kuti at the end of the day, that actually saved the day. Problem yava yakasolvwa. She managed to get her children back, and did. But ukada kutarisa nyaya yacho manje kuti how to connect the two. Yekuti the problem was there. Yekuti vana vakuda kuenda. But then the solution manje, the way it has been proposed, under logical circumstances, you wonder, it doesn't make sense. But she followed. She was trying to solve the problem. And this is what God can do for us. Even in our faithfulness, in the power of God, we will be able to overcome and to get to that light. If we keep to our hope, if we keep to our faithfulness, we'll get there. But unfortunately, the devil is always there to dissuade us to get there, to divert our attention into understanding God and into following what God wants us to do. So that is the battle that we always have all the time. Even dzimwe nguva kana wafunga kuita chinhu chakanaka chauda kuitira hama yako kana shamwari yako, you will always hear kamwe kasound kanokuti what do I get out of this? Zvinondibatsirei kuti ndinonomupa mari yangu aite zvaari kuda kuti aitezvo. You'll be discouraged, and then you fail to help that person. Munhu wacho dzimwe nguva, if you had helped him, pamwe anga achazokwanisa kubatsira mhuri yake kana kuita zvimwe zvinhu zvinotoshamisa zvinotozokubatsirawo even iwewe. But because you don't know, in many ways you don't know, kuti zvimwe zvauri kudiscouragwa naSatan kuti uite zvanga zvine mabenefits akawanda sei, you don't know. In many cases we don't know. But our faith will always give us that thought yekuti Joshua, that positive idea, that positive thought, yandanzwai, I must adhere to it because yakanaka. I think you should only be guided by that. This one is a good idea. I must help it. This person is in trouble. Let me help him. Hauchameasure kuda kuti zvaari kukumbira kubatsirwa zvicho zvine basa here kana kuti kwete chako iwe kubatsira, because that's what God wants you to do. Saka VanaBaba, I think when we try to meet together as VanaBaba, to me, I'm here to share Nemi. My ideas are not Mushoko. How we can build each other to be better men, to be better leaders in our families, to be better leaders for the nation, for the world, so that we get to that twilight. It's going to keep to our hope, keep to our faith, and we hope Mwari vachafara nesu, but pavanozotitora nguva inotera, because tichangotorwa tese at one point or another. Saka vazotitora tiri well prepared and suitable for his kingdom.